Okay, diving right in, the first thing we should know and make sure everybody knows are some basic facts about Latino Virginians. All right, so take a look at this slide. In case you can't read it, the sort of beige bars there are the number of native-born Latino Virginians, and the green bars are the number of foreign-born Latino Virginians. And as of 2013, there were over 700,000 Latino Virginians, and that's up from just 500,000 in 2007. And in fact, that growth in the number of Latino Virginians accounts for 38% of Virginia's total population growth during this period of time. So that's really important because a fast-growing population has been part of why Virginia sort of got through the recession without as much pain as some other places, because when you have a growing population, you have a growing demand for goods and services and housing. And so of these 700,000 Latino Virginians, about 316,000 are immigrants. And those immigrants are from a wide range of countries, as was already touched on. So as you can see from the pie chart, and as you might have already known or suspected, folks from El Salvador are that is the most common country of origin for Latino Virginians. But even Salvadorans only account for 27%, slightly more than a quarter, of foreign-born Latino Virginians. There's a lot of people from a wide range of other countries, particularly Mexico, Bolivia, Peru, Guatemala, Honduras, and Colombia, each of which accounts for more than 10,000 foreign-born Virginians. So it's important to know this diversity of experiences and countries of origin for foreign-born Latino Virginians, because there's actually diversity is one of the things that all Americans value about immigration and the role of immigrants in our economy. So knowing this information and sharing it can help our neighbors who might be less supportive of immigration come to better understand the value that Latino immigrants bring to Virginia. And by the way, I also looked at how all Hispanic and Latino Virginians, not just immigrants, self-identify their specific origin or ancestry. And again, El Salvador and Mexico were the most common specific origins for all Hispanic and Latino Virginians, but actually the next most common was Puerto Rico. So the next topic is that although Virginia's Latino community is from many places, it's mostly very well established in the United States. So in addition to the half of Hispanic and Latino Virginians who are native-born, another 2/3 of foreign-born Virginians have been in the U.S. for at least 10 years. And 3 in 10 foreign-born Latino Virginians is a naturalized U.S. citizen. So if we add up those native-born Virginians and those naturalized U.S. citizens, we get to 480,000 Latino and Hispanic Virginians who are currently U.S. citizens. And of those, 275,000 are adults old enough to vote. So here, the dark green bars are the share of immigrant Latinos in each age group. The yellow bars are the share of non-immigrant Latino Virginians in each age group. And the gray bars are all Virginians. And as you can see from the green bars, Latino immigrants in Virginia are mostly working age. And this has important economic implications because it means that immigrant Latinos in Virginia are making economic contributions right now, rather than sometime in the past or future. And you can see the result in the high share of immigrant Latinos who are currently working. So again, dark green bar here is foreign-born Latino Virginians, and 74% of Latino immigrants living in Virginia and who are over the age of 16 are currently working, compared to 69% of non-immigrant Latino Virginians and just 62% of all Virginians. And these Latino immigrant workers, of whom there are 225,000 in Virginia, are working in every major Virginia industry. So as you can see from the dark green bars, and you may not be able to see this, and I'd be happy to share the slides with people if you get a business card from me. But the dark green bars are the share of immigrant Latinos in each industry, and they are working in every major industry is the point here. But there is some level of concentration in the construction industry and in the industry group that includes arts, recreation, accommodations, and food services. but it's not like everybody's working in those industries. On the other hand, Latino immigrants are somewhat underrepresented in public administration, so that's like state and local and federal government jobs, and in the information industries. Interestingly, if we look at non-immigrant Latinos, we see a much distribution of employment across industries that's very similar to that of non-immigrant Virginians. And in fact, a lot of folks who are working in public administration or who are in the active duty military. Furthermore, one thing that doesn't show on this, but that I also want to share, is that among these working immigrant Latinos are about 19,000 who are operating their own businesses. So that's 1 in 12 working Hispanic and Latino Virginia immigrants, and about 6% of all Virginia entrepreneurs. And there's also about 5,500 non-immigrant Latino business owners in Virginia. So these are all good things, but it's important to also recognize some of the ways in which Latino immigrants and all Latinos in Virginia are facing particular challenges, so that we can talk about how public policy can be used to try to address some of those challenges. So again, dark green bars is the share of Latino immigrant-headed households in each income group. And as you can see, it's generally somewhat lower. The left-hand side is the lower income groups. The right-hand side is the higher income groups. So for example, 72% of Virginia households headed by Latino and Hispanic immigrants have incomes under $75,000 a year. And another way to look at how families are doing is to look at poverty rates, and by that measure, we find that 1 in 6 Latino immigrants is living in a family with an income below the poverty line, and that's significantly higher than what we see for all Virginians. On the other hand, as you can see from the yellow bars, non-immigrant Latino-headed households in Virginia are doing pretty well. So there's probably a number of reasons for these lower incomes among immigrant Latino-headed households, but one of the factors is probably the relatively low levels of education that Latino immigrants in Virginia have. Almost 4 in 10 foreign-born Latinos in Virginia have less than a high school education, and just 15% have at least a bachelor's degree, and that's lower than what we see for all Virginians. And one way to make sure that everybody can find a job that matches their skills and ability would be to make sure that not only is there access to adult English language courses, but also making sure that we structure our workforce development programs and our adult education programs in ways that are accessible to people who may not speak English fluently. And another thing to note is that these higher than typical levels of poverty and relatively low incomes pose particularly high challenges because so many of Virginia's Latino immigrant families live in high-cost Northern Virginia. So on the left-hand pie chart here is the share of Latino immigrant-headed households who are paying more than the recommended amount of their income towards housing. That's the dark red. While the right-hand pie chart is the share of all Virginia households. So as you can maybe see, more than 40% of households headed by Latino immigrants in Virginia are paying more than 35% of their income towards housing costs. And that's compared to just 26% of non-immigrant Latino-headed households and 24% of all Virginia households. So that's a real significant challenge when families are paying that higher share of their income towards housing, particularly when their incomes may not be that high to begin with. And there's, we could talk about some of the ways that public policy can be used to try to address some of these challenges, including looking at ways to increase the supply of housing and to increase the supply of affordable housing, and then also make sure that people are not facing discrimination in the housing market or in the mortgage lending market. So while almost 90% of all Virginians have access to some form of health coverage, that's the gray bar there, less than half of immigrant Latino Virginians have any health insurance. It's just 47%, and that's the green bar. And part of this difference is likely due to Virginia being pretty stingy about how we provide public coverage to immigrants. We actually go beyond the federal restrictions to basically prevent even more legal immigrants from accessing Medicaid. But actually, some of it's probably due to other factors, since even non-immigrant Latinos have somewhat lower levels of health coverage than all Virginians.